The crystalline throne room of the Zephyrian Empire stretched endlessly upward, its walls carved from a single massive geode that caught and fractured light into 1,000 dancing rainbows. For 3 millennia, this chamber had witnessed the rise and fall of dynasties, the coronation of emperors, and the execution of traitors. Today it bore witness to something unprecedented. Prince Kael'thas stood motionless at the center of the vast space, his 7-foot frame rigid with shock. His violet skin had paled to an almost translucent lavender, and his forearms hung limply at his sides. The ornate ceremonial blade that had been passed down through 47 generations of Zephyrian royalty lay shattered at his feet, its fragments scattered like fallen stars across the polished stone floor. Across from him, Marcus Chen straightened slowly, rolling his shoulders as if he'd just finished a particularly satisfying workout. The human's modest 5'9" frame seemed almost comically small in the cavernous throne room, yet every noble courtier and guard present felt the weight of his presence like a physical force. "That can't be right," whispered Duchess Velnara from the observation gallery, her voice barely audible even in the profound silence. "Humans are primitive. They barely discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago." The Emperor himself, ancient beyond measure, leaned forward on his throne, his compound eyes each the size of a dinner plate, fixed on the human with an intensity that had reduced seasoned warriors to trembling children. Yet Marcus met his gaze without flinching, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The challenge had begun 3 hours earlier, born from Prince Kael'thas's arrogance and the Empire's fundamental misunderstanding of humanity. The Zephyrian heir had been regaling the court with tales of various species the Empire had conquered, describing their weapons, their tactics, their inevitable submission to superior Zephyrian might. "And then there are the humans," he had said with a dismissive gesture of his upper right arm. "Soft-skinned weaklings who build crude ships and fight with chemical explosives. I could defeat their greatest warrior with one arm restrained." The Empire's ambassador to Earth, Lord Thexamiran, had shifted uncomfortably. He alone among the court had spent time on the human homeworld, had walked among them and observed their nature. "Your Highness, perhaps—" "Perhaps nothing," Kael'thas had interrupted, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Bring me their finest fighter. Let the court see how easily the heir to the Zephyrian throne dispatches these creatures." And so Marcus Chen had been summoned, not their strongest soldier, not their most decorated general, but a maintenance engineer from the human embassy's technical staff, a man who had volunteered for the posting because he wanted to see the galaxy, who spent his days fixing environmental systems and his evenings learning Zephyrian poetry. The actual combat had lasted less than 30 seconds. Prince Kael'thas had opened with the traditional Zephyrian battle stance, his ancestral blade singing through the air in patterns that had been perfected over millennia. Each movement was precise, deadly, beautiful in its lethality. He was, by any measure, a master warrior trained from birth in the deadliest combat forms known to the galaxy. Marcus had simply moved. No grand techniques, no ancient fighting styles passed down through generations. He had stepped aside from the prince's opening strike with casual ease, caught the noble's overextended wrist with one hand, and applied pressure. The sound of breaking bone had echoed through the throne room like a gunshot. The prince's pained roar had been cut short when Marcus's other hand found his throat, applying just enough pressure to demonstrate control without causing permanent damage. The ancient blade had clattered to the floor, and then Marcus had done something that would haunt the nightmares of every witness present. He had smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry about that, Your Highness." "Are you hurt?" The casual concern in his voice, the genuine worry for his opponent's well-being after so completely dominating him, had been more unsettling than any war cry or threat could have been. Now, as the prince nursed his broken wrist and wounded pride, the court struggled to process what they had witnessed. The Empire had built its power on the simple principle of superior force. They were bigger, stronger, faster, and more advanced than every species they encountered. Their military doctrine was based on overwhelming their enemies through sheer physical dominance. But Marcus had moved with a fluid efficiency that spoke of something beyond mere physical training. When Prince Kael'thas had struck with the speed of a striking serpent, the human had been simply elsewhere. When the prince had pressed his attack with the fury of a berserker, Marcus had remained calm, patient, waiting for the opening that inevitably came. "How?" The Emperor's voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "How did you move like that?" Marcus shrugged, an eloquently human gesture that somehow managed to convey both humility and vast confidence. Practice, I suppose. Though I should mention, Your Imperial Majesty, that I'm not really a fighter. I fix air recyclers and water purification systems. The implications hung in the air like poison gas. If a human maintenance worker could so casually defeat the heir to the most powerful empire in the galaxy, what could their actual warriors accomplish? Lord Thexmiran cleared his throat softly. Your Majesty, perhaps now would be an appropriate time to discuss the trade agreements the human delegation has proposed. The Emperor's massive form seemed to shrink slightly into his throne. Around the chamber, nobles who had spent decades speaking of human inferiority found themselves studying their feet with sudden intense interest. Marcus straightened his uniform jacket and smiled pleasantly at the assembled court. I should probably get back to work. Sector 7's atmosphere processor has been making concerning noises all week. He paused at the throne room's entrance and turned back with that same apologetic smile. Oh, and Prince Kalthus? You might want to have the medical staff look at that wrist. I think I felt something crack. The massive doors closed behind him with a soft whisper, leaving the throne room in absolute silence. In that silence, the Empire's understanding of the galaxy shifted forever. Humanity had not announced their arrival with conquest or threats. They had simply sent a maintenance engineer who fixed their air recyclers. And that somehow was the most terrifying thing of all. Outside the palace, Marcus Chen walked through the alien gardens, already mentally composing his report to Earth Command. The Zephyrians would be much more reasonable to negotiate with now. They always were once they understood what humanity truly represented. Not another empire to be conquered, but something far more dangerous. A species that had learned to be dangerous without needing to seem dangerous. A people who could break your bones while asking if you were hurt. The gardens were beautiful, Marcus reflected. He hoped the cultural exchange programs would include botanical studies. His sister would love to see these flowers. After all, there was so much more to explore in this galaxy.